Hello, everyone, and welcome back into our sports podcast. We have episode 3 coming up. We're going to talk a little bit about wide receivers and some other stuff today. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I want to see some more comments down in the comments below. We should engage in some conversation. We had some good stuff going on in the first episode, and I'd like to pick it back up here. Today, we actually have our first guest ever. First, I'll introduce Matt. Matt, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm pretty excited for this one. And we have a little bit of extra stuff planned at the end, so it should be a little bit of fun.
Yeah, we do. We're switching up the formula a little bit today. And also, we have the man, Virginia Beach, Virginia himself on Instagram. Alex, how are you doing?
Hey, I have decided to use my first guest appearance on a podcast ever, my first appearance on a podcast ever, to commit the first cardinal sin of eating food on a podcast. So thank you so much for getting me this off my bucket list.
Hey, don't worry about any cardinal sins on here. I've said a lot of unholy stuff in the past. I'm glad we were able to pop your podcast cherry. And welcome on. I'm excited to talk to you today. Matt, what do you have planned for us?
So today we're going to start off with my wide receiver rankings. So how it's going to work is it's my number one wide receivers on the team, whether that be through however ESPN describes as the wide receiver one, or another site I think called Our Lads. I kind of just decided, oh, this might be the wide receiver one. This might be the wide receiver one. And I went through the list by team, so it's not just because there may be another wide receiver two that should be higher on the list, above maybe another team's wide receiver one. It doesn't. This is not like a straight ranking. It's just like by team. And then some of the teams actually have like multiple really good wide receivers. I think the Bucks are a good example of that. And I have them grouped together. I think either kind of fit in this spot, and you can make an argument for either in the spots that I have them in. So
Yeah, for example, like Chris Godwin's and Mike Evans are collectively, individually better, or in the top half percentage of the league. But in order to keep a somewhat uniform list going, where we don't talk about the semantics, who gets what targets, things like that, putting them together and above people like Debo Samuel, who's lower on the list, things like that. We're doing a little bit more of a unified approach here. So thank you, Matt.
I also don't know that enough about like wide receiver depth to make like groupings. So we're just gonna go with the biggest one that I recognize, and we're gonna start off with the Lions at last. They have Terrell Williams and Rashad Perryman, who they just signed from the Jets. Uh, it didn't look like Terrell Williams played in 2020. I couldn't find his stats for it. And Rashad Perryman, ex-Raven Brown, I think Buck, then to the Jets. You know, a little bit of a journeyman. Just all around okay wide receiver group, but definitely the worst number one if we're going with there. And next I have the Raiders. They have Ruggs as their number one. They had Nelson Aguilar, who's a little bit higher on this list. He left. He was the number one receiver taken in the 2020 draft. He was okay. Nothing to write home about. I had him and Hollywood Brown pretty close together, given that their skill sets are similar. Speed guys, but speed doesn't always kill in the NFL. But for some people, it does. Next, I have the Eagles. I have Travis Fulgham and Rager. Jalen Rager? Something like that. Fulgham's fine. I watched him play. He definitely, I think he was an ex-Lions receiver, undrafted by them out of ODU. Pretty good receiver. I just don't know if his one season is enough to project him higher in the future. I think he had one good season. And with Rager, he didn't really have a breakout season. I believe he got injured, but I think that's just an Eagle thing. I think that's something they do. So next I have Hollywood Brown, Marquis Brown. He's I, I think he's a fine receiver when he wants to be. During the regular season, he likes to fall down a lot after he catches the football. I don't really enjoy watching him, but hopefully he continues to pick it up. I think in the playoffs, you really see like what he could be. I just wish he was like that more consistently. Next, we have Michael Pittman, promising wide receiver, but I just don't. From when I watched him and what I know about him, he doesn't. I didn't really see a lot of elite traits. He's good hands, good runner with the football. But besides that, I think he's just kind of a solid receiver. I don't know if he's a true number one. I think that they need to get a true number one in Indianapolis. Next, we have Debo Samuel. Really really gadget player, works well in Shanahan's system. I think that he does well enough, but I think the receivers above him are a lot better. And then at 26, we have the Steelers, Deontay Johnson / Juju. I think that they're both fairly talented. Deontay Johnson's definitely has higher end talent, higher ceiling. He just had a major drop problem. So if he fixes that, he could be a really dangerous wide receiver. Watching him, he's really good at getting open. He's really good at making people miss. He's really fast. And it's just his hands are the only thing that's really holding him back. And I think Juju, as we saw with Antonio Brown, is a legit receiver and he can do things. He just lacks number one abilities. I think that he's mainly a slot guy and he excels there, and that's fine. But that doesn't propel them higher up the list. And plus, he also had a drop problem. And that's why I think that they're so low. I think they could be higher if they both didn't have so many drops last year. I know the ball was thrown to them a lot in that stupid scheme the Steelers were running, which ultimately ruined their season. But it is what it is. So that's my list. And we'll throw it over to Christian and see what you have to say.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to put in for the lower end of the receiving core here, but I do want to pass the mic over to Alex to talk for a little bit. He is our resident Eagles expert. The Eagles have been struggling with a wide receiver for many years now, and hopefully are trying to get one this year in the draft. They've recently moved from the number 6 pick in the draft to number 12, so we'll have to see who they end up with. They might have just removed themselves from contention for Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase in the draft. But there's a lot of good options in Waddle, Smith, Rashad Bateman, who I think is a little early there. But Alex, do you have anything you want to talk about when it regards to the Eagles receiving core and Travis Fulgham, his breakout potential and all that?
Yeah, it's pretty hard to defend the Eagles wide receiving core. It's not awesome to see them as bottom 3 on your list, but I really can't point to a lot of things to be optimistic about in a sense, other than just homerism. You hit the nail on the head when you talked about the Eagles having an injury problem. Fulgham pretty much went straight into surgery after the season. Rager, I think it was either broke or dislocated his thumb very early in the season, missed the first couple games, and underproduced since then. But it's also just it was a developmental issue and just a usage issue from the top down in regards to our coaching and scheming. Fulgham had an electric 3 games. I think he got something like over 90% of his yards in 3 games alone. And then when some of our older guys came off of, as you would guess, the injured reserve, he lost a lot of reps to them. Rager was not schemed how he was in college, which is interesting because a lot of people say we drafted him a little high based on how we thought he'd fit in the scheme, and then didn't scheme him that way. We never really schemed him open. The Eagles ran like some of the most, I think, 4 verts in the entire NFL. So we just had a real big issue in our usage and our development of wide receivers, and it's been that way for a while. We have some great tight ends. We made Richard Rodgers a top 5 tight end according to PFF. Um, but it's really difficult to be optimistic about the wide receivers if we're looking at past production. We're going into a new coaching staff. We're looking at some new schemes. Uh, this is the guy Nick Sirianni, who made Phillip Rivers look great at this age. This is the guy who made Jacoby Brissett almost a playoff contending QB. So I'm hopeful in that sense that we're going to have a totally new scheme that's hopefully going to be a lot more wide receiver friendly. But as far as Eagles go, I think if we're looking at the 2020, 2019, 2018, and pretty much 2017 season too, you've got them in the right place. I think you're a little bit. Did you mention Robbie Anderson yet?
No, Robbie Anderson is actually the 25th.
Yeah, I did. I zoned out because I was eating a lot of cantaloupe, so I didn't know if you stopped at Juju or talked about Robbie Anderson too.
No, I stopped at Juju.
I think you're a little down on Debo, especially because if you look, he only played 5 games, so whether or not he's listed as wide receiver 1, he definitely wasn't for the past year. Brandon Ayuk, the rookie, he stepped up pretty heavily into that wide receiver 1 what's it called, position, and really took it by the reins. If you just want a fun fact about Debo, he ended the year with -7 yards before the catch. So
Are you kidding?
no, I'm not kidding. They just scheme him for that so often. He ended with -7 yards before the catch, and then the rest of his yards were after the catch.
Oh no.
So he's great the way they use him. He's electric in that offense, but I mean, if you're putting him this low and you're putting that whole wide receiver core this low because Debo was injured that much and his production was low, I think you're gonna have to really reevaluate this list going into next year.
Yeah, and speaking of coming into next year, the two teams we just most recently spoke about, the Eagles and the 49ers, are subject to a lot of variance on the upcoming season. 49ers just recently today traded into the number 3 spot, exchanging picks with the Miami Dolphins, and are projected to be taking a quarterback, whether that is Zach Wilson or someone else. Is yet to be seen, but they seem pretty adamant about fixing their quarterback situation, which ultimately will impact the ranking of their wide receivers and their effectiveness throughout the season. There's another thing I'd like to throw to you, since this is a good day to have you on. With the Eagles trade today, they also traded with the Miami Dolphins. They moved from their 6th position to 12, and were apparently in consideration. We're moving up to get a quarterback, should that have been Zach Wilson. Do you have any thoughts on that and the potential quarterback controversy that is brewing a little bit within the Philadelphia streets?
Yeah, I think I'm not too big into college football. The most I know is that this has been listed as a pretty strong year for QB candidates.
Yes.
So I'm confident that if the staff thought they could get their guy by trading up, they wanted to look at that possibility, because if Jalen Hurts isn't the man for the future, or anything, we're really stuck with him unless we're going to go with trying to trade for a wide receiver, not a wide receiver, a quarterback from another team. So maybe the staff was just saying, if we see our number one candidate this year and we don't see a number one candidate for the next couple years, we should look at every option. Trading down to number 12 definitely puts us at a lot more risk for not getting one of the top wide receiver or just receiving candidates in general. If you want to add Kyle Pitts to that as a receiving threat, he's not a wide receiver per the letters next to his name, but he plays in a lot of wide receiver schemes, and he's a receiving threat in the same way that Ertz, Kittle, Goddard, and the other guy are Kelsey. The number one tight end receiving threat. I
The
don't know
other
how I
guy.
forgot his name. So we're still in contention for the top 3, top 4 people, depending on how the chips fall and how if other teams go best pick available, uh, or draft high for team needs. But I'm all I can do is trust that this new coaching staff has a plan. They're gonna make the choices they make, and I'm just gonna react to them.
That's all we can do as fans.
You
Is
know?
we can
Yeah,
sit
just a
here, we
little bit
can
of
hoot and
fatalism, right?
exactly. We can sit here, hoot and holler all we want, but in the end, we have no impact on what happens. Uh,
Yeah,
so I think we have
Another
the
thing I think is pretty interesting with like the Eagles trade
please.
is that they're actually getting the Dolphins pick. So if Tua, comes out there and just bombs, that like some people think he might, like that's a pretty good trade if the Dolphins are around that 15 range next season to move back spots and get a top 15 pick. So I mean, Eagle fans would be rooting against Tua this year, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean next season with the Colts conditional first, like we'll be up to 4 picks in the top 64.
oh
So
wow.
maybe 3 picks in the top in the first round. So it's not a lot of people wanted one of those really top wide receivers this year. They wanted that sure chance at Smith or Chase or Pitts. But if you're looking at a team that's going to massively clear cap space after this year, has committed to a rebuild as per the reports of what our head owner Lurie wanted, like acquiring those picks is definitely the way to go as far as that plan.
Yeah, really interesting. We got to keep our finger on the hot press that is the Philadelphia Eagles. Matt, we're going to bring it back to you if you want to run through a couple more of those wide receivers and then give us your opinions, a little bit of talking about all of that, see how it goes.
I will. I'm excited to share the next part of my list. I think Debo Samuel is fine where he's at. But at 25 with the Carolina Panthers, you have Robbie Anderson. They also have Moore that's in there. I mean, Robbie Anderson is a solid wide receiver. At this point, most of the wide receivers up are all number ones. I think they can all carry an offense if needed, which is crazy. I mean, there's just a lot of good wide receivers out there. I think it's surprising to see Robbie Anderson super low. I would thought when I originally did this list that he'd be in the middle, but here's where he's just a good solid wide receiver. Brandon Cooks, burner, proven to be a decent talent on multiple teams. And he just keeps on getting traded, but he does well. He did well in his offense. I believe that he has an recurring injury problem, but uh, overall a very good receiver. Nelson Aguilar, the pride of Philadelphia, went to the Patriots on a rather large contract for his abilities, but he's got really good hands, really good potential, really high ceiling. The problem is that he had a drop problem. He doesn't always show his abilities, but on the Raiders, he really did a good job at proving that his abilities can be utilized, if utilized correctly, can be very, very useful. Next, we have Corey Davis. I think that he was, the number one for the Titans, and then AJ Brown came in and kind of stole that light from him. And AJ Brown is on this list a little higher, obviously. I just think he's a solid, probably bottom tier wide receiver one. Still really good. Definitely not a wide receiver two. He definitely has wide receiver one talent. So good for him for getting a decent payday, and hopefully he can prove something with the Jets. Next we have Tyler Boyd of the Bengals. I really like the Bengals receiving group in general. So I think that this is since I know a little bit more about the Bengals, is maybe a little bit biased, but I really like their wide receiving group. Boyd is very underrated. Can make all the catches. Gives our cornerbacks a lot of problems when we play them, and we have really good cornerbacks. So I think Tyler Boyd is a great wide receiver. DJ Chark is next. Again, playing on a lackluster Jaguars team, doesn't really get the light, but he is a very solid playmaker, and I believe that is where he belongs at 20. I can't believe we're already at 20 with these names that are coming up. So, take it away, Alex. What do you think of these next five?
Yeah, I do think you have Robbie Anderson and all of the Carolina Panthers a little bit too low on this list. They lost Curtis Samuel to the Washington football team. That does hurt them. He was a really good gadget player for them. But Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore are legitimately good receivers. And while their stats aren't eye-opening stats, they are putting in solid effort and made Teddy Bridgewater look like a above competent QB. I'm a little less optimistic about Brandon Cooks. I mean, people keep offering firsts for him, so there's got to be something there. But yeah, but I wouldn't put him above Robert Anderson, and I definitely wouldn't put the entire Texans receiving core over the Panthers. Nelson Aguilar,
I wouldn't either. Not the rest of the receiving core. Cooks is probably the only guy in the receiving core that I'd vouch for.
See, this is why I aired my grievances before the podcast, because some of these people you're counting two people when it's not clear cut. Some of these guys you're only counting for themselves, and I think you should have done at least the wide receiver one and wide receiver two. But we're here right now, and I'm loving it. Nelson Aguilar, I've got a soft spot for. I don't know if he's the 23rd best wide receiver one. I think he's got all the skills for it, but he has a nerves issue, and in I don't even know what I don't know what the stadium's called. In the Patriots Stadium,
Gillette.
with fans probably back in there, we could see a repeat of of what happened with the Eagles in his final couple seasons.
I like what you're insinuating here that Nelson Aguilar is unable to perform in front of a crowd, and the only reason he had any sort of modicum of success this year is due to the fact that there was no people in the crowd. I really like this avenue we're headed down.
I think he can perform in front of a crowd, but he needs to perform in front of the crowd gets in his head.
He has
That's
yet to
what we
prove it.
saw when he wasn't performing. It's he cycles on himself, you know? And so having a good QB like Derek Carr throwing to him without any crowd, you know, without those voices in his head, he was able to perform. He was able to step up, especially in a younger wide receiver core and be that leader. And it showed. He had a great year. Not a record setting year, but a great year. Corey Davis has had not shown that he could be a wide receiver one on the Titans, so I don't know why you think he'll be a wide receiver one for the Jets. But
I mean, yeah, I didn't want to refute it at the time.
yeah, there's someone here who's a bigger Titans fan than me, so I'll stop cross talking with him and let him talk on his own.
No, it's okay. It's difficult when you're on a call and not in person. It'll happen every now and again, but it's all right. Corey Davis, I do think has potential. He had shown that throughout his collegiate years when he had such rampant production. He was technically worthy of his top 5 selection in the draft. However, due to the Titans' inability to develop and produce quality receiving talent during the time that Corey Davis was drafted, he ultimately failed and suffered some injuries and apparently was hurt a lot more than the public was aware about. And it's been recounted a number of times by Titans players saying that a healthy Corey Davis is one of the best wide receivers in the league. We have yet to see that, so that's just all hearsay at this point. But I like to say one more thing about Aguilar while we're relatively near the subject. One of my favorite online videos I've ever seen was that man from Philadelphia who was apparently receiving was catching babies out of a burning building and said that he was catching things unlike Aguilar, uh, which is one of my favorite little Philadelphia quotes there. Which reminds me, I'm going to go on a very quick tangent here about someone who has trouble with their senses like Nelson Aguilar would. I'm currently on a kick of, and by the way, the opinions I'm about to display do not affect that of the members of the podcast, the guests of the show, or the podcast in general. These are my opinions. Do not take any issue with anyone else but me, Christian. I've been on a recent Helen Keller truther kick. Have been for many years now, but it's kind of up flaring recently after the development that I had learned that she apparently flew a plane for 30 minutes during one point in her life. And I'm going to just leave it there, leave you with the statement. Helen Keller flew a plane for 30 minutes, and I'm going to move on. I think the rest of the quarterback list, the wide receiver list is pretty decent. It's pretty on point. There's a lot of good wide receivers in the league, so it's tough to differentiate the ones who aren't top 5, top 10. But I think you've done all right. And with that, I'm going to pass it back on to Matt to hit us up with the next one on the list.
All right, thank you for that side note. So at 19, I have the LA Rams wide receiver Cooper Kupp. I think Cooper Kupp's awesome. I mean, I can't really say much more about that. He's great after the catch. Devonte Parker, great hands, pretty good at contested catches, if my memory serves me correct. I think he might have gotten injured for a bit last season, or maybe Tua just came in. I'm not sure. Next, I have Terry McLaurin, a very fast, very high effort player. I think that he's going to be in Washington for a long time. If they don't extend that man as soon as his contract's up, they're fools. He is before his contract's up. He's a great player. A lot of potential. I could easily see him climbing into the top 10 very soon if he ever gets competent quarterback play. Next, we have Galladay, the savior of New York. I am happy that he got paid. I think that he got overpaid. But I think that he is a borderline wide receiver 1. I think that he has very good highlight plays. I just think his problem is that he gets injured a lot. But and he also had Matthew Stafford throwing to him and as one of the only weapons in the offense. It's not exactly true, but I said what I said. Next, we have the Browns at 15 with Jarvis and OBJ. I think OBJ is a better player than Jarvis. However, I think that Jarvis has a higher ability in the scheme. That's why he's their wide receiver one. And again, I have more in-depth knowledge about their team since they're actually in the Ravens division, and I have a little bit more context to place around them. But I think Jarvis is a phenomenal wide receiver. So is OBJ. It's just a matter of who's getting open that day and what's their attitudes like and stuff like that. So again, great receiver, very very talented. Next, I have the Chargers duo of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. I think Keenan Allen's the better receiver out of them. I just threw Mike Williams in because he's very talented and I didn't want him to get lost in this. But again, Keenan Allen is a very very talented wide receiver. Great catches. I think he's going to do big things with Herbert if they can keep him around long enough. So next, I have Theon Jefferson. Right now, again, there's two of these because I think Thielen right now is the number one. I think Thielen's still a little better than Jefferson, but I think that Jefferson has all of the potential in the world. And if he can build on what he did last year, then he's going to be a great receiver in this league. I really hope that he can. I think he's in a really good situation right now, being the wide receiver 2 in air quotes. So I think 13 is about where he belongs. Next, I have the Seahawks wide receivers, which is again bunched up. Lockett and Metcalf. I think that Metcalf has the higher ceiling than Lockett, but I also didn't want Lockett to get lost in the mix. He's another really, really good wide receiver. He can make all the catches. He is very quick, very light on his feet. Metcalf is just run down the field and Wilson and all his talent will just throw it up, and so I like that about him. But at the same time, he does have a drops problem right now. I think his rate is decently high for a lot of the for where he is on the list compared to the other receivers in the list. Their drop rates are decently low compared to him. So I think this is about where they belong. I think if I had Lockett by himself, I'd probably put Lockett more in the Galladay Jarvis range. But right now, I think that Metcalf could be in that 12 range. It's kind of hard. I mean, these are just my opinion, so it is what it is. And next we have AJ Brown.
And before we move on to that, because I can speak for a while in what we've done here, let's cover the last 10 that we've gone over. I think it's interesting to have Cooper Kupp down there. I think he's shown a lot of promise.
Wait, I'm not. Whoa! I'm not stopping. We're doing that. We're going up to 10. We're gonna do up to 10. I'm gonna talk my AJ Brown.
We're gonna talk. We're gonna do this now. Okay, you want to do this?
If
we're gonna do this, we're basically
Brown.
gonna ignore 20 through 12.
All right, fine. If this is how you want it, take it away, Christian. Tell me your opinion.
I'm gonna take it away here because I feel like if we're gonna have a list, we might as well talk about this before I completely lose all track of normalcy schedule and completely ruin it by my tirade that is about to ensue with AJ Brown at 11. So I think that McLaurin has potential to be one of the higher wide receivers on this list. Unfortunately, you have Washington quarterbacks throwing to him. What else can you do? I really like Devonte Parker. I feel that he's a very steady rock. All of these players in this list here that we just recently spoke about have a very unique trait in common, which is their dependability. I think none of them here are complete world burners and can take over a game at a moment's notice, but I think that a lot of them you can rely on them for 6 targets a game, get 80 yards, potentially a touchdown, and there's not a whole lot of variance within their performance, in my opinion. Alex, do you have anything you want to add over the wide receivers we just talked about?
Yeah, I'm surprised. I always saw Robert Woods listed as the LA Rams number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, they have a little bit of a revolving door over there. I think at any given moment, any wide receiver on the Rams is their best wide receiver. So you could chalk that up to anybody. But I think in most recent terms of success, I think Cooper Kupp had the best season. He had a little bit, not a breakout, but he had a good stretch of games there at the beginning of the year from what I remember.
Stretches of games and have good stretches of games. We saw that earlier on the list with Fulgham too.
We did.
It looks like they ended pretty statistically the same. So I'm not going to have any arguments there. And I do understand that like some coaches don't scheme wide receiver ones and wide receiver twos as clearly, and they just have schemes that get anybody open or specific people open. That just caught me off guard. I always thought it was Robert Woods. I don't think I have any real issue with this part of the list. I don't think there's anything that I'm knowledgeable enough about these teams or these individual players to really say that you've overvalued or undervalued them. I think Parker isn't as steady as a rock that you think he is, but I really don't have anything to point to other than that he has had some egregious drops. But those might have just been primetime moment drops more than anything. Sorry, I just ate a cheeseburger.
You're perfectly fine. Your opinions are fair. Do you have anything else you want to add in this section here, Alex?
Yeah. Good job so far. Matt, is there anything you want to highlight? You've read it and it's your list, but I mean if there's anything you wanted to specifically talk about.
Yeah, speak what's on your mind, bro. This is your opportunity to deviate from the script a little bit and speak what you're feeling.
I mean, I'm happy with the list. I think one thing that like how I rank them is I kind of be like, oh, I think this group is together, and then I'm like, who would I prefer if I was like starting a team as my wide receiver one, which is why it's easier for me to do it that way, because it's like, oh, would I prefer McLaurin or Parker for the 2021 season? And I'm like, well, I think I'd prefer McLaurin, and that's just kind of how I roll with it. So I think overall, I think, yeah, I'm fine with what I've said so far. I think last podcast I kind of regretted putting Eckler so low. I missed a major piece of information with him, and it seems like this podcast I also mixed it up with Robert Woods. Robert Woods should have been at least with a slash and mentioned with Cooper Kupp, but I overlooked it, and it is what it is. And I would like to move on to AJ Brown.
Well,
If
let me
everybody's okay with
quickly
that.
say something.
I get to go. I get to give my spiel first.
Okay, I mean, this isn't about that. Speaking on the whole, making a mistake here and there. That's the beauty of it. It's called Our Sports Podcast, not the Sports Podcast. We do what we want and what we need to do and what we think is right. And if we're wrong, you're wrong. So that's the end of that.
I guess I am. So AJ Brown, Titans. I had him in the top 10. After a little bit of thoughts, I moved him below Cooper and Sutton.
You don't
Cooper
even know
was
his
for
name.
sure.
You don't even know.
Cortland Sutton.
Yes.
Yes, I know his name.
You said Cooper.
What did I actually?
You don't even know his name.
No, I said Cooper and Sutton. Cooper is Amari Cooper.
Fraud.
Anyways, so I moved them below. I think that in terms of talent, he's a talent to be a top 5 wide receiver. I think that he needs to clean a little things up. After the catch, he's a monster. Again, strides. I think he's a better DK Metcalf. Everyone wants to hype up DK Metcalf. He's better than DK Metcalf. And he makes all the catches he needs to make, except for sometimes. I think that was my one retractor from him, is that he wasn't perfect catching. Not perfect. He was in the middle tier wide receiver range when I was looking at like drop percent. So it kind of said maybe he's not top 10 yet, but he's definitely going to be there after this season, given that the Titans offense can function with all their changes. If they do, and I think that he'll succeed. I mean, he's in the Julio Jones build of wide receivers, and all he needs to work on is catching, which I feel like as a wide receiver, I mean, it's your one job, so I think that's something he can definitely improve at. So not I'm going to keep on going to number 6, but I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time in this topic in a little bit. So next I have Sutton.
We'll come back.
He was hurt the entirety of the season. He is I think that I included forgot how good he was. I mean, we were talking about him like he was the next big wide receiver before the 2020 season, and whenever he got hurt. Once he got hurt, we kind of like forgot about him. He was definitely on the rise. He's a great wide receiver. I don't remember who was throwing to him in 2019. I think it was Brandon Allen, if my memory serves me correct. So, and he still had a 1,100 yard season. I think that he is very talented, great hands, very low drop rate. So I was happy with putting him 10. Cooper, he's known for his phenomenal route running. He is the engine that drives the Dallas offense besides Dak, who I think should have a good season coming back. You could see how the production dropped off, but the wide receivers all still had pretty good seasons. So with or without Dak. So I think that that's just a really talented wide receiver groups. You threw in CD Lamb in there too as the third receiver. So it takes even more pressure off Cooper. So I think that he's really talented. Next we have Evans/Godwin. It's funny enough because we mentioned them earlier. I think that I would put both of them right here. So it kind of worked out that they are both at spot 8. Evans is, your red zone threat, and you just kind of tossed him. And Godwin's the type of guy who's got sure hands. It was funny because every single time I watched him, I felt like he was dropping balls, but it was just I was watching him at the wrong time. He has a very low drop rate in both 2019 and 2020. He's a phenomenal receiver. It's ridiculous that the Bucs are able to keep both of them. But, it is. Next, we have the tragedy of Allen Robinson, both because he did not come to the Ravens and also because he plays with crap quarterbacks for his entire career. Poor guy. Great wide receiver, great contested catcher. I feel like he doesn't have the separation that a lot of the guys at the top have. So that's just kind of is what it is. And next, we have Michael Thomas. A lot of people want to hate on Michael Thomas, but he is another wide receiver with great hands. People say all he does is run slants, but if everyone knows he's running slants, he catches it every time. He's great at contested catches. He's great at route running. He's great after the catch. There's not much bad you can say about Michael Thomas besides his attitude. His attitude is complete ass. So I'm sure if he wasn't such a pain in everyone's rear end, he wouldn't be hated the way he is, but he kind of brings it upon himself. But I think talent-wise, he's definitely top 10, borderline top 5. We'll see how he rebounds this season. So with that, go on your A.J. Brown tangent, Christian.
Well, I'll since I have tunnel vision and I have my blinders on right now, I'll allow Alec. Whoa, I'm like not speaking English. I'm sorry. Since I have a little bit of tunnel vision going on right now, I will allow Alex to speak before me before I go on my little rant about the situation we had prior. Alex, give me your thoughts on what we just talked about. If you disagree with anything, I know you didn't like the doubling up of receivers. Let's see what you have to say for this part of the list.
Yeah, I think that Mike Evans is a tight end who isn't assigned to block linebackers. The man ran a 4.53 40-yard time. He's as big as a tight end, so why not just call him a tight end?
Came with the
Regardless of
numbers.
that. Regardless of that, I think Evans and Godwin, I don't care where you put them in the top 10. I think they're the perfect example of what a wide receiver 2 can do when they have a wide receiver 1. Everything above them seems to be a wide receiver 1 regardless of who their wide receiver 2 is. I'm getting that post cheeseburger greasy type of accent now. So
Where
this
it's
is gonna be
bubbling
a
up a
fun,
little bit in your throat. I
yeah,
completely
that's gonna be a
understand.
fun last minute of the podcast.
Hey, if you need to mute and start burping up a little bit, that'll be fine.
No, I'm a professional. I'm a professional amateur. I think you made an excellent point about Thomas. Same thing with DK Metcalf. Like people like to rag on him for only doing one thing, but if they're doing the one thing and they're doing it well, how can you fault them? You do what works. It's not insanity. Diggs, I think, really proved himself as a wide receiver 1.
Oh.
Stepping out of Thielen's shadow.
Yes, I will say we're gonna save that for the next little bit
Spoiling my
here.
list, Alex.
Matt
I
doesn't like
think,
when anybody steps on his toes. We had only gone up to 6. We will cover 5 here in the future.
We are at Thomas.
So we ended at
I
Thomas.
do wanna say something that I think that Evans and Godwin are both wide receiver 1s. I think that before Godwin got there, Evans was good, and I think that if Evans left, Godwin would be good. So I think that honestly, like if they're so I think someone
yeah, absolutely.
like Juju is someone who's a wide receiver too. Like when not AJ Brown, when Antonio Brown was there, he was phenomenal, but he just didn't have that it factor to be the wide receiver 1. Whatever that is, whatever that magic magic thing is. He just didn't. And I
Corvette.
I believe that I believe that Evans and Godwin are both one of those. They could both be wide receiver ones, both in the top 10. They are that talented. And as much as you want to say he's a tight end, I think that his red zone threat alone is just. I mean, he's probably one of the best receivers ever in the red zone.
Yeah, sort of like Kyle Rudolph or Kelsey or Kittle or any of them. T1, WR1. They're just letters.
At the end of the day, these are all letters on a screen that could be completely interpreted differently if you had a fatal lack of understanding of the ability to see, read, hear, things like that. I don't know what I'm referencing. But to speak a little bit on the situation we have at
Wait,
10
can I say
and
one last
11.
thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm going to need all the time I need.
I think it was sort of in defense of yours. A.J. Brown came in and got Corey Davis a wide receiver 1 contract somewhere else.
Yep.
So that's something. That's something to his credit.
Thank you. And now it is time for the diva to walk up on the stage, me, and for me to deliver a little sermon to you for making this list incorrectly. I would first, before I go off, would like to ask you, what were the determining factors that pushed Courtland Sutton over A.J. Brown for your list?
I believe his ability to excel under poor quarterback play, his ability to excel being the wide receiver 1 without any other assistance, in his lower drop rate.
Okay, wow, it seems to be that we are cherry picking statistics on the Our Sports podcast.
Well, no,
Interesting.
that's not true, because remember, it's not like a Titans bias, because I put Derrick Henry 1,
Well,
and
that's
that was
objective.
with me like nitpicking in a certain way, and I've had a lot of like I had Tannehill decently high, I believe, when I did my quarterbacks rankings. It's just I think that if I was making a team, I preferred Courtland Sutton over AJ Brown for the 2021 season. We don't know how AJ Brown's going to perform without a borderline 1 receiver on the other side. We don't know how he's going to perform with a different offensive coordinator and with a different scheme. We know that Courtland Sutton can perform with a poor quarterback play and without any other support. So Courtland Sutton can go in there and have a monster season with both Hamler and Judy as the wide receivers 2 and 3 coming up for the Broncos. Now, Drew Lock's a different story. If they're able to get a different quarterback besides Drew Lock, they could really be, working with fire there. But I think he has the same woes that like Allen Robinson had. So that's why I bumped Courtland Sutton up. And then I think Cooper is definitely better than AJ Brown right now. But I think AJ Brown's going to be way better than him when it's all said and done.
I'm not fighting with you on anyone above 9. However, I am continuing my beef about Courtland Sutton and the removal of A.J. Brown, who was originally in your top 10 on the list, and I believe may have been put down to spite me. However, I would like to say I haven't looked at drop rate because that's not available to me at the moment. But what I can tell you is that in less games over their career, A.J. Brown has had ridiculously better statistics, and he has had much better of an effect on his team by everyone than I'm sorry, I stuttering because things were popping up on my screen and distracting me. I think that it's okay. Hold on, I got all wrapped up.
Alex out here sending us the advanced statistics, just so we're all aware.
Okay,
of,
yes, and
of what's
we're
going
gonna
on.
cut all this out, right? Because I'm stuttering over my ass.
Oh, we'll see.
Well, okay, yeah,
Helen
all
Keller
right.
might have to go with it.
No, we're keeping Helen Keller in. But Courtland Sutton has not had as good of a season as A.J. Brown has in the years he's been in the league. Their per game statistics are still way in favor of A.J. Brown, who has over 20 yards more. And I don't know how to interpret this. I'll just basically stay out that A.J. Brown per game in his career has 4 catches, 70 yards, and 0.6 touchdowns a game. Courtland Sutton, through his career, per game, he has 3 catches, 57 yards, and 0.3 touchdowns a game. That is objectively better in the realm of A.J. Brown. Now, if we go to individual...
I need to respond to that, because the per season or like per game, do you remember that he was not the wide receiver 1 in 2018. And 2 was hurt for all of 2020. Well, I mean,
Great. So his
hurt
per
in the first
game statistics are not affected by that because it only affects the games that you play in. And interestingly enough, AJ Brown had 2 knee surgeries within a week of the season ending. So being injured is not an excuse, and I think it is one of the reasons why.
Oh, I wasn't saying his production was lower because he was injured, but continue.
Okay. Well, thank you for continually interrupting me. And AJ Brown has had 2 better seasons than Cortland Sutton's 1 good season, and he only had 1 good season. I think this is just completely coming out of bias. I'm not sure where this comes from, but I think undeniably AJ Brown is way better than Cortland Sutton. I wouldn't put him 5 spots above him on a list, but I think objectively he is better. And speaking of that, the drop rate for 2019, which is what has been recently fed into my earpiece, is AJ Brown had a 2% drop rate and Cortland Sutton had a 4% drop rate. So I think I don't really know any more statistics you have to back up this assumption other than just a general feeling.
I missed this. I believe that AJ Brown had like a 5% drop rate or maybe a 4.2. Alex, do you since you're on this, do you know?
No, I'm on 2019 right now. Hold on.
Yeah, because
Okay.
unfortunately,
Sutton
Cortland
broke
Sutton did
12
not.
tackles in 2019. AJ Brown only broke 8.
Uh-oh. Either
Okay.
way, you know what?
We have upped the tally.
You may have a point. You may have a point. I'll tell you what. In the future, I'll have AJ Brown above Cortland Sutton, unless this season Cortland Sutton has an All-Pro season.
Okay.
I'll agree to that. You've proven your point.
AJ Brown had a 4.7% drop rate in 20.
Yeah. So
And
that's what I was basing on.
And we can't put that against Cortland Sutton's. We have no idea how he would perform because he was out this whole year.
I mean, that's fair. You're completely right. Again, it is what it is.
We were banking this. We were banking
Cortland
this
Sutton
ranking
had a
on
16.7% drop rate on 6 targets.
So what I am understanding here is that Matt is just completely lying and
No,
is
I
not
was not
reliable as a source of information.
Yeah, but he also had.
I think that Cortland Sutton could easily be better than AJ Brown this season, but we will see. We'll see what happens.
And the final statements I have on this is when you look at the two individually, and I will come at this from an unbiased approach. When I look at the two individually, I look at them and I see, does either of these wide receivers, who are both very young, have the potential to be a top 5 wide receiver in the league? And I have the answer yes, but only for one of them. I don't see Cortland Sutton ever being part of the top 5 wide receivers in the league, but I believe AJ Brown has that potential, which is why I believe inherently this discussion of putting AJ Brown out of 10 and into 11 below Cortland Sutton is just completely invalid.
All right, I mean, I think it's close, but again, I've agreed to concede your point. So we're gonna move into the top 5. So now we're gonna give Christian a chance to cool down. I'm gonna move into Diggs, and
I'm all hot.
I think that Diggs completely transformed the Bills' offense. I think that Josh Allen put in a lot of work in the offseason. It'll be interesting to see if he can continue it, but I think that the addition of Diggs, who was always open, great route runner, always open, great hands. He actually had a decent number of drops, but he was targeted so many times, and he dropped so few of them. I think he had like 8 drops, which everyone around him, that was like a 6% drop rate, but he was at like 4, maybe 3 point something. I'm not exactly sure. So he's a great wide receiver, and I think that he totally belongs at 5 below these other people, but definitely above everyone else. Alex, what do you have to say to that?
Oh, I think you already heard what I said. I agree. He transformed that offense. He really proved that he was a wide receiver 1 playing underneath Adam Thielen on that depth chart over in the Minnesota land. I already said what I said a little bit too early, so I'm not going to take up time right here.
No, it's okay. You can hit us with it. I personally didn't hear it because I was speaking over top of you when we were doing that. So,
if you have anything else you want to say, now's the time to say it. If not, I'll move on. Just let me know.
No, nothing.
All right, so we're gonna move on to number 4, which is Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill is, not your standard, route running make the guy fall over sort of wide receiver, but I think that he is just a unique speedster. He's not like a John Ross type that gets hurt a lot. He's a speedster that is he's a problem. If he's on your team, or if your team is playing him, he is your defense's number one priority. If he didn't also have Travis Kelce on the team, but overall, like whenever you play the Chiefs, he's always someone you got to mark, you got to double. There's always got to be a safety looking for Hill. Like, where's Tyreek Hill? Where's Tyreek Hill? So I think that's what makes him a top 5 receiver for me. And on top of that, he has very good hands. It's not like he's dropping all the passes. It's not like he is acting a fool, for lack of a better term. He's a very consistent catcher, coupled with his speed and his just ability to just turn a 5-yard screen into a touchdown. So I think he definitely belongs at 4 over Diggs for that reason, just his game breaking ability with just a few touches. So Christian, do you have anything to say on this?
No, I think Tyreek Hill is a game changer. I think he's one of the best receivers in the league. Obviously, I think he's merited to be number 4 on this list. I do think there's potential benefit from the Chiefs system and the talent that they have on that entire roster, front to back, especially starting at the quarterback position. But I think Tyreek Hill has shown week in and week out and is a top tier talent in this league and perfectly fits within a system, and that only keeps benefiting each other. It's an upward spiral from there.
All right, Alex, do you have any comments on it, or should I move on to my number 3?
Yeah, I think he's a guy with insane physical talent. His speed. He has the skill to track the ball when being thrown deep, which is awesome, and he can make people miss in the open field. I think I agree with Christian. He benefits a lot from having Travis Kelce open up the field a lot. He benefits from having some other really fast guys. You can't cover them all, and that was really shown in the first game versus the Buccaneers when he put up a lot of yards and then disappeared.
That was a crazy stat line. Sorry to interrupt. That was a crazy stat line. Like,
Yeah.
the first half yards, wild.
Yeah, it was. Which, I mean, he earned all of that. He's not handed these things. Patrick Mahomes is an above average quarterback, but Tyreek Hill is an above average wide receiver. Even though I think he benefits and he wouldn't be as good, say, on the Patriots offense with Cam Newton throwing to him, or even a middling offense, I don't think he'd be good with Carson Wentz throwing. He'd be good with Carson Wentz throwing to him, but he wouldn't have the same seasons that he does. But he absolutely earned a top 5 spot.
All right.
You can't keep him down.
You really can't. You know who else you can't keep down? Probably one of the best wide receivers, not of all time, but of my generation, Julio Jones at number 3. I think because the Falcons are so bad, he kind of gets overlooked in the wide receiver conversations now. But I mean, he's still an insane talent. I believe he got hurt for a little bit this season. It's just Julio Jones is going to be one of those players that probably never gets outside the top 15. If he regresses, he's got a long way to fall. So he just has everything you want in a receiver. He's fast. He's got good route running. He's got phenomenal hands, phenomenal feet. Just everything about him is great. It would be nice if he would stop getting hurt so often. But I think skill wise, talent wise, he is the top 3 receiver in the league. He is everything you want. So with that being said, I'm just going to pass it back to Alex and see what he has to say about it.
Yeah, my favorite, not memory, but my favorite image that pops into my mind with Julio Jones is him tracking down whatever safety or defensive back that made that interception,
I know
just
you're
running him down the field and almost suplexing him. He is, along with Hill, like just a physical specimen who put in the work to be a good, skilled wide receiver. I think all of us know we're past the hill of Julio Jones' prime. He's playing injured more and more. He's missing more and more games, which I think availability is important when judging a wide receiver 1. You can't say someone is dependable if they're not on the field. So I think he might just drop out depending on how often you're going to see him. His stat lines are still really good for all the games he misses. Uh, I need to remind myself of what his last season's numbers were, and I don't think we're out of this yet. Yeah, he still put up 771 yards in 9 games. So he's still one of the best, but I think I don't think we're going to get the Julio Jones of the past anymore unless he is able to find himself on a new team, which frankly he's just too mild-mannered to do.
Yeah, I can respect that. A lot of receivers in the past, Odell Beckham, one to name, Antonio Brown, uh, have a little bit of an ego that allows them to pursue other opportunities outside the team that raised them. I don't think Julio has that in him. I think he's a fairly loyal guy. He likes to keep his head down, likes to put his work in front and have that speak for him. But I think put him in another system that uh, allows the ability to shine a little bit more than whatever is going on in Atlanta, which could potentially be on a complete upswing here with a brand new offensive mind head coach who is coming in, former Titans offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, who had 2 top 10 offenses in the past few years. So it's very good to see for the Falcons. Could be looking up, could be getting a new quarterback this year. Who knows? There's a lot going on there. I think Julio obviously is the prototype for wide receiver. If you want to look at an individual in the league right now and say, hey, who do you want to build a wide receiver off the mold of? And definitely Julio Jones. He has everything I personally want, and we just need to get him on the field more. And with that, we'll head on up to number 2. Matt, take us away.
Number 2, DeAndre Hopkins, the Hail Murray, the stupid trade, the
second round pick himself.
The second round pick himself. Oh man, I cannot believe it. Yeah, no, Hopkins is, he's great. He's for me when I watch him, I feel like he doesn't run very fast. He doesn't move very fast. I feel like he's a pure I'm going to beat you with my route running and I'm going to beat you with my hands. And I think that's kind of what makes him special. And he just does he's probably got the best hands in the league. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he does. It's a subjective measurement, but that's just kind of how I feel. So, yeah, I think he totally belongs at number 2. I think that I would take him over the other 3 in the top 5 right now. So without further ado, Christian, do you have anything to say about Hopkins at 2, and that doesn't have to do with the Titans?
Okay. I was derailed by that. I wasn't going to say anything about that, but
I
I was
honestly
derailed.
thought you were going to mention the master of Bill O'Brien, but I have instead drug this conversation on.
Oh, well, if you want to talk about Bill O'Brien, imagine handing the keys to your car of a drunk person who has taken 3 other drugs and said, hey, you own this car now. You make all the decisions of this car. That is what Bill O'Brien did with the Houston Texans, and it's just beautiful to see the state of a disarray that they are currently in. I think you're right to say Hopkins has the best hands in the leagues. I don't think anyone's going to fight you on that. He's incredibly talented. Happy to see him out of the AFC South. But in a situation where he can thrive with talent around him and the opportunity to be the big number 1 threat for Kyler Murray on the air raid offense. Alex, you have any opinion on this particular ranking?
Hopkins,
Yes, Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins,
DeAndre Hopkins, nuke.
DeAndre
Arizona
Hopkins,
Cardinals.
who doesn't start it, he just finishes it.
Exactly. He's top 2 and not 2, according to him.
DeAndre Hopkins, who fears God.
I'm unaware of his religious affiliation.
Yeah, he fears God.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he deserves to be up there. I think it's pretty wild that Deshaun Watson had his best statistical season the year Hopkins left, but Hopkins continued to produce with a different QB as the clear-cut wide receiver 1. I've got no argument against him being up here.
That is an interesting little factoid there about Deshaun Watson being better without DeAndre Hopkins on the team. That's interesting. But without further ado, the moment you've all been waiting for, it's nobody we've spoke about yet. The number 1 wide receiver on Matt's list is
Adams from the Green Bay Packers. I almost said New England Patriots. From the Green Bay Packers, Devonte Adams. He is. When I put him up here, I was kind of surprised. I was like, I don't know if he belongs here, but I really think that he had the best season, and he's in one of the better situations given that the uh, Packers refuse to give Aaron Rodgers another receiver. So they're like, you can have practice squad guys or nothing. So take your pick. So they gave him practice squad guys. Adams still shines. He's still phenomenal given that. So I think that he's in a good situation where that he's going to get a lot of targets, and he has the opportunity to go against the best, and then he's proven himself against the best. So overall, I think that he also has really good hands. I've heard a little bit of a comparison to him to Deontay Johnson, who at the beginning of Adams' career, he had a drop problem, but he eventually came into his own, and is now a very good route runner, very schemed really well, and just has all the ability in the world. So I think right now on my list, he's going to be number one until I'm proven otherwise. But overall, a very solid wide receiver. I think any in the top five could be number one. I think you can make an argument for all of them. So with that being said, any thoughts from either of you? Either one of you, just take it away.
Yeah, I think with barring a few discrepancies we've talked about, I think this is a pretty straightforward list. I know you had previously mentioned to me you weren't sure about your ability to rank wide receivers. I think you've done a good job. I think you made good points about them, and I think that especially because of this last season, Devonta Adams is the number one receiver in the league. That can change at the drop of the hat with the top 10 receivers all being incredibly talented and could take over a season at any given point in time. So I'll pass it on to you guys. Anything else you want to say?
Exactly. With what you said, I think Hollywood Brown could easily be the number one receiver next year. He definitely has that potential.
Oh no! Here, what's that? Oh no! Oh no! Is that a gust of wind?
No,
Oh no!
Alex, do you
And
have any
he's
comments on
down. Hollywood Brown can't get up again.
Alex, do you have any comments on my list?
No, but I've got a fun little trivia fact for you
Yeah,
guys.
come at us. We
All
want to
right.
thank you guys for listening to the list. We're gonna move on
Yeah.
a little bit more into a free form conversation with some trivia, other things. I'm gonna hand it over to
Yeah.
Alex. Alex, what you got for us today?
Yeah, Matt Ryan has thrown for 4,000 yards every season since 2011. Do you know when Julio Jones was drafted?
What was it? 2011.
It was.
That's impeccable.
That's a pretty good duo down there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't like Matt Ryan, but that is really interesting to see. That it takes two to tango, and no matter how great your quarterback or wide receiver is, if you don't have a good relationship, nothing's gonna be good out of that.
Yeah, he's thrown for over 4,500 yards in 7 of those.
Wow.
Alex, it is interesting you bring up trivia because you may not know this, but what we're doing next is trivia. It's going to be 2000s trivia questions for the NFL. So, are you guys ready for it?
I am ready. I'm rearing to go. Matt, change up that format on me, baby.
Alrighty. So, the first question is, and this is going to be Price is Right rules for any of the number questions, and you guys have to keep score because I refuse to do it.
Okay.
So, it seems like we're going to do 10 questions, maybe more, depending on how we're feeling. But how many teams won more than 100 total games during the 2000s decade?
Oh
So,
no.
Until
From 2000 to 2010, how many
10.
teams won more than 100 games?
Correct.
I would go with 2.
Alex, do you have a guess?
Alex, if you gave your submission, I did not
Oh yeah, I said 6.
hear 6. All right, Matt, hit us with it.
All right. So the answer is 4. So Christian wins it because
Ooh.
we're doing Price is Right rule. If you can name 2 of the teams, you get a bonus point. So because Alex lost the question, I will allow him to try to get the bonus point.
Okay. I'm gonna make a quick guess. I'm gonna say the New England Patriots.
Oh, I was gonna say that one.
Okay, and do you have another one?
I'm gonna say the Philadelphia Eagles.
That is correct. You get the bonus point.
Oh
Christian,
wow!
if you can name the remaining two, I will give you a bonus point
I
that
would
you guys are keeping score of.
believe that the Baltimore Ravens would be one of them.
No,
Oh really?
it is the Colts and the Steelers.
Those were the two next on my list, but I knew that the Ravens had a lot of really good seasons and really were
How many
never
did
in
the
the lower
Packers
half
win?
of the league. So
Well, you have to remember we had Billick for like the end of his career, so
Oh.
that was not good.
Yeah, how many? What are the Packers at for the 2010s? I mean, the
I have no
2000s.
idea. They should be pretty high though, shouldn't they?
I mean, you
Yeah,
think
Um,
with the amount of QB talent, you know how QB wins are a stat. So I'm
All
gonna go
right.
to Packers real quick. Go to their Pro Football Reference. Y'all ever
I'm going
seen
to move
that
on
site?
to the trivia, so hopefully this doesn't give it away, but I don't think it
No,
will.
go for it.
Who was the first overall pick in the 2009 draft?
2009.
2009.
Oh Lord. Oh. Oh Lord. I'm thinking of 2008. Wait. I know the answer. Alex, what's your guess?
Oh, it's Matt Ryan, isn't it?
Nope, it's the man himself who causes me to lose sleep every night.
Wrong, Matthew.
Matthew Stafford. The most
It is
adequately
Matthew
rated quarterback in league history.
Oh, I didn't know he was drafted in the 2000s. In
Yep.
the aughts,
Yep,
as
he was just
people
around the
like to
corner.
call it.
In the odds. Yeah, he was 2009. Matt Ryan was 2008, but I don't think he was a first overall pick. Next we have how many teams lost more than 100 total games during the 2010 decade? This one should be pretty easy. So, Price is Right rules don't go over.
6.
6,
Yeah.
7.
7. All right. Well, neither of you guys get a point because the answer is 2.
Oh, 2. Wow.
All right. So, because both of you guys get one guess,
Lions.
Christian, that is one of them. Alex,
I
this should
knew
be
it.
the easiest one that you could possibly get. You have to guess the other team if you can.
Texans. Say the Texans.
Not the Texans.
It's probably the Texans.
No.
Is it the Browns?
It is the Browns.
Damn it. I forgot the Browns were bad, I have to be honest.
The Browns were terrible. So we're going to skip this next question because I think everyone knows it.
What is the question?
The 2008 team that finished with a 0-16 record. So
Oh, yeah.
it is easily the Lions. The next one, the only team to end the decade with a 500 record overall. So 500. And it's not who you think, because when I first read this question, I was thinking Eli Manning because it's poetic.
That is very poetic. Overall, I think I'm gonna throw. Who am I thinking? The Rams. The Rams went 500 this decade.
It is the New York Jets.
Oh,
Close enough. It seems that we have lost Alex, but we can just keep on doing trivia, or we can call it here. Maybe can continue this at a later date.
well, let's just see if we can get Alex back by leaving and rejoining.
We've lost Alex forever, it seems. Well, I just want to thank Alex if he can hear us. I don't know if he can hear us, but it was really awesome. He had a lot of good insight. He answered all the questions pretty thoroughly, and it was a pleasure having him on the show. Honestly, a real improvement over myself. So maybe it'll be Christian and Alex's podcast soon. Who knows?
Yes, it will remain our podcast, but it will no longer have the full development of the original members. I do also want to thank Alex. He's been a great guest. I wouldn't rather have anybody else on. A lot of great insight. Hope we get him back in the future, and hopefully he'll be here at the end next time so we can say our closing remarks with him. But alas, thank you, Alex, for joining. I want to thank all of you for listening, for engaging with the podcast, giving us some good feedback. I also want to ask you a little question here. if Alex is continuing to leave and join the podcast because he can't hear us right now, unfortunately. But if we want to go within a little bit of feedback here, if you guys want to tell us, would you rather us run through, say, the top 16, top 10 of a position rather than the entire 32, things like that? If you want to talk about how you would want to switch up the format a little bit, any suggestions, please put them in the comments down below. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. We're going to try to keep up with it. We're really enjoying doing it, and we're hoping that you are enjoying listening. So without further ado, thank you so much. Have a great day. Oh, and he's back.
Hey, everyone.